So, as some of you might have noticed, last month I embarked on a noble quest, making lore-related videos about Identity 5. Why? Because apparently, I love torturing myself by trying to make sense of something that's designed to be confusing. And guess what? A lot of players are right there with me, still scratching their heads and asking, where do I even start with this story? Can't blame you. The Identity 5 lore is like an onion wrapped in a mystery, tucked into an enigma, and maybe fried for good measure. Especially if you're new or just dipping your toes into the deep, spooky rabbit hole that is IDV lore. Think of it as a puzzle where every single piece is also another puzzle. Even me, your humble lore enthusiast who started this chaotic journey back in January 2023, still gets tripped up sometimes. And, well, don't even get me started on the lore veterans. They've been around longer, sure, and they have been getting into headaches more often than me, as we all sometimes get lost in the labyrinth of theories and storylines. But fear not, that's what I'm here for. In this video, I'm rolling out the red carpet of clarity, at least for the basic understanding of the whole IDV lore. Here you'll find the answer about where to start. What's the deal with the lore? And why does Identity 5 have more side stories than a Netflix anthology series? My mission is to help you go from, what the heck is this, to, oh, okay, that makes sense, maybe. So grab your snacks, maybe a notepad, and prepare yourself for the lore breakdown you didn't know you needed. This is your favorite and mildly confused broadcaster, Silmina, signing in. To kick off this chaotic journey, let's start with one simple, burning question that you probably ask at one point of playing this game. What the heck is this game even about? Well, if you strip it down, Identity 5 is basically a game where 4 survivors get smacked around by one hunter, or the opposite, especially if you're up against those menace to society survivors known as the Harasser Squad. You know the ones. They don't just decode ciphers, they decode your sanity. It's pure chaos, just like the lore. Anyway, for most players, the big questions remain. What's the story here? Who are these survivors? What are these so-called monsters? Are we dealing with undead zombies rising from their graves for another round of suffering? Or are they just really some hot chicks with tragic backstories? The answer to that question lies in an event called the Manor Games. What is the Manor Game, you ask? Alright, let me give it to you straight. That whole 4 survivors versus 1 hunter stress-inducing mess we play is officially called the Manor Game. Why? Because all the participants are either invited to the manor, or just stumble in like, oh look, free real estate! Some show up to complete missions, others to sell cryptocurrency. But ultimately, these survivors are lured to the manor by a shady figure known as the manor owner. It's believed to be Orpheus, so for simplicity, let's just say Orpheus is running the show here. Now, why is Orpheus dragging all these people to his Victorian Airbnb? Is it out of spite? A grudge? A need for better dinner party guests? Not exactly. He's actually luring them in to test a special medicine. Yep, you heard that right. Our survivors, the ones we cry over in matches, are basically glorified guinea pigs. But wait, what's the deal with this medicine? Why is he making it? Who's involved? When did he start? How? All right, chill besties. I could ramble for hours, but let's keep it brief. Orpheus is supposedly cooking up this miracle drug to help his childhood friend Alice. Poor Alice had her life ruined when bandits rolled into her home, murdered her parents, and left her traumatized. Orpheus's big brain idea? Make her forget the whole thing and give her some shiny new memories. Sweet, right? Except, what I just said is a theory. Why a theory? Oh, we'll get to that, just not now. Patience, darling. Anyway, the whole Manor Game we're playing is just a reenactment of these experiments. Since there are so many survivors from God knows where, there are multiple game sessions. We're talking Game 0, Game 2, Game 4, Game 5, Well, like the sequels no one asked for. Each game has its own tea, which I spill in my other videos if you want the details. So, now you know who the survivors are and why they're here. But what about the hunters? You know, those gorgeous beings we all simp for, and also the terrifying nightmares that make us scream? Why are some hunters so drop-dead beautiful while others look like they crawled out of a Lovecraft novel? Here's the breakdown. Hunters fall into several categories. They could be humans supervising the Manor Game, hallucinations caused by the experimental drug, robots, ghosts, or straight-up Lovecraftian deities. Yep, deities. There's no real explanation for why ghosts and deities are hanging out here. It just is, because Identity 5 is where the historical meets the paranormal, and logic checks its bags at the door. If you're mad at NetEase for this wild setup, well, me too. Nevertheless, hunters are those things I mentioned earlier. Humans, hallucinations, ghosts, deities, and a robot. By now, you're probably like, what even is this game anymore? Well, folks, this is just the tip of the iceberg, so brace yourself. Don't worry, though. I'll be your guide through this chaotic mess until the very end. Let's keep going, shall we? Alright, so now you know what the Manor Game is, who the survivors are, and what the hunters represent. But you're probably still wondering, what's the deal with the main storyline? You know, the one where you play as a hot journalist infiltrating the manor to unravel its spooky mysteries? Well, buddy, here's the tea. That storyline you're playing, it's also part of the Manor Game. Specifically, it's believed to be the grand finale, aka Ashes of Memory. Let me break it down for you. Ashes of Memory dropped in 2023, and when pieced together with the events released in 2022 and way back in 2018, is thought to wrap up the Manor Game saga. That's why if you just jumped into the main story, you're probably sitting there like, what is happening? But don't panic, since you've got the basics of the Manor Game, its survivors, and its shady purpose, you're already ahead of the curve. Oh, and let's not forget the latest buzz, the closing night. What's that, you ask? That's another chapter of the Manor Game, and features the infamous Group 8. Group 8 includes characters nicknamed Dead 1, Dead 2, Dead 3, Dead 4, and Violetta. Like, she's the only one everyone's simping. Super cheery vibes, right? If you're curious about Group 8's tea, I've already spilled it in one of my videos, so feel free to check that out. And if you're a lore perfectionist and want every excruciating detail, hit up the lore experts. You can find them in the IDV official Discord or in any other community forum like Reddit. They've got you covered. So by now, you probably have a decent grasp of the Identity 5 storyline layers and the chaotic puzzle that is the Manor Game. But let me stop you right there, because if you're about to ask, what about the other group's stories? I've got news for you. Not everything has been uncovered by the developers. Yep, you heard me! The devs at NetEase have only spilled the tea on groups 4, 8, and 9, plus a slice of the final game, or Ashes of Memory. The rest? A whole bunch of mysteries just hanging out in limbo. So, how do people even figure out what happened to characters like Aesop, Vera, Emil, and the rest of the crew? Excellent question! Let's revisit what I said earlier. The IDV storyline is like a puzzle, but with a twist. Each puzzle piece is its own puzzle. Yep, it's puzzles on puzzles. Let's break it down. If you want to figure out the grand finale of the Manor Games, you first need to know what the Manor Game is. What went down in Game 0, Game 1, Game 2, and so on. And yes, each of those games is a puzzle too. Take Game 8, aka the Hullabaloo, for example. You need to know who participated, what happened, why it happened, and so on. Now, let's zoom in on the question who. You'll need to check every character's serial number to get who participated in Game 8, which is tiring, right? But then we got their number, so let's say Game 8 consists of, like I said before, Dead 1, Dead 2, Dead 3, Dead 4, and Violetta. Let's zoom in again, this time into Violetta. To understand her, you'd need her entire backstory, including who she is, why she joined the Manor Game, and what happened to her during it. Sounds manageable? Oh no, darling, it's not. Because even her backstory is scattered across multiple sources, such as her official backstory, deduction quests, birthday letters, events like the 2020 Christmas event, and random letters from characters like Smiley Face, Weeping Clown, and others. Don't forget costumes and accessories descriptions, because those drop lore crumbs too. And once you finally scrape together Violetta's backstory, you still need to figure out what happened to her in the game. Tiring, right? Well, let's say you manage to do that, you'll now need move on to other participants like Mike and Murrow. After piecing them together, you tackle the larger picture of what happened in Game 8. Rinse and repeat for every game, every group, every layer. But is my analysis canon? Maybe. Or maybe it's just a really strong theory backed by scattered evidence. Thanks to NetEase's writing being, perhaps, intentionally vague, there's plenty of room for interpretation. For example, Martha's illegal surgery. Is it an abortion? A C-section? Something else? Even the word illegal could refer to the medicine used rather than the surgery itself. See what I mean? Ambiguity everywhere! Oh, and the devs love to trip over their own plots. The hullabaloo is a prime example. Was it in July or November? The calendar says July, then switches to November. But William Ellis's letter claims it already ended by November. So, which is it? Confusing, right? Thankfully, or not, sometimes the devs clean up these inconsistencies with retcons. But for the rest? Theories. Lots of them. Some make sense, others are pure chaos. Think of the clues like a bunch of dots. Lots of them. The developers gives us the dots, but no lines. We, the players, have to connect them ourselves. From 5 dots, you could make a star, a pentagon, or some wild abstract shape. It's all up to interpretation until they give another dot, and another, and another. And all that effort? It might solve one mystery, like, who is Violetta? But to figure out the entire Identity 5 story? Oh honey, good luck. Every piece of the puzzle has to fit without contradicting another. And with clues being as rare as a perfect basement rescue from Naiad with detention, it's no easy feat. Even some people would suggest that you don't even try to deep into the Identity 5 lore, as it is something that might give you a headache. Also, if you're lucky, essence stories might give you a crumb of lore. Oh, what's an essence story, you ask? Excellent question, because I'm about to spill on that right now. Yeah, there's more to the story, as what we are just finished is the guide of the main story. If you've made it this far, congratulations! You've officially unlocked Basic Lore Understanding 101 in Identity 5. But hold up, you're probably thinking, wait, basic? What's next? Well, let's address the elephant in the room, side stories. Yep, alongside the main storyline, there's a mountain of side stories to dig through. We're talking about the essence stories, the Call of the Abyss, the Truth and Inference, the Ivory Tower series, the crossovers, the charity events, and the seasonal events, like summer or Christmas. But, oh, you thought side stories weren't important? Sweet summer child, sadly, they're important. Some of these side stories sneakily tie back to the main storyline and drop clues that are absolutely essential to piecing together the bigger picture. Feeling overwhelmed yet? Welcome to the chaos that is Identity 5 lore. But hey, we've come this far, so let's keep the train rolling. time to dive into the side stories, starting with Essence stories. In the game's structure, gameplay is divided into time periods called seasons. Each season is further divided into essences. That's why you hear terms like Season 19 Essence 1 or Season 20 Essence 2. What makes essences unique is that they each have a distinct theme. And here's where the headache begins. Every essence comes with its own story. To unravel these stories, players need to piece together the lore from essence-related items like skins, accessories, and of course, the promotional video. Yep, just like with the main storyline, the essence stories require you to connect the dots yourself. Take Season 20 Essence 1, for example. On the surface, it has a fun winter sports theme, but lurking beneath is a creepy story inspired by Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. Fun, right? Well, if you find piecing together ominous mysteries from snowboarding skins fun, then sure. Sometimes, though, essence stories are more obvious. When they're paired with in-game events, the storyline is laid out a little more clearly. A great example is Season 28 Essence 2, which coincided with the 2023 Mid-Autumn Festival, or Season 33 Essence 1, which tied into the 2024 summer event. While most essence stories are standalone, meaning that they don't connect to other stories, some are part of a series. Examples of these series include The Banquet of Vanities, The Princess in the Desert, and The Sins and Virtues. And then, of course, there are the heavy hitters like Call of the Abyss and Truth and Inference. Yep, these two iconic storylines, they're technically part of the essence stories. But don't worry, I'll unravel their mysteries for you in due time. If you feel tired yet, get some tea or anything. It'll end soon, so don't worry about it. Now let me spill the tea on the Call of the Abyss, which is another word for IDV's most dramatic annual extravaganza. This isn't just any tournament. It's a global battlefield where teams claw their way to the top to claim the title of #1 on the planet. Think of it as the Oscars, but for Identity V. But little do players know that there's a whole juicy backstory tied to this spectacle. Lore-wise, the Call of the Abyss is a brainchild of Orpheus. Yes, Orpheus, our tragic novelist turned detective. He penned this creepy little masterpiece back in his writing days. Since the game's debut, we've been treated to 7 of these eerie side stories, with the 8th one just about ready to blow our minds. And honey, these aren't just random tales. They're sprinkled with breadcrumbs that tie into the main lore. Some are subtle, while others are, well, practically waving red flags. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. How do people not know there's lore here? Honestly, darling, it's because the storytelling is more detective mystery than soap opera. Just like the Essence stories, you've got to sift through Essence skins, accessories, promo videos, and event descriptions to piece it all together. It's like a treasure hunt, except the treasure is more cryptic than your ex's text. Sure, starting with Call of the Abyss 4, they've made it a bit easier to follow as the developers made some direct approaches in telling the story, but still, this ain't for the casuals. If you feel overwhelmed yet, well honey, try to bear with it because there's the Truth and Inference. That's another juicy side story people just can't get enough of. Truth, Inference is Identity V's fancy way of celebrating its anniversaries. Released every year as part of the anniversary events, it's an extension of the Essence stories with its own connected characters and gripping tales. If the design feels a bit familiar for you, well, that's because it takes major inspiration from Sherlock Holmes. The story centers around the Orpheus Detective Agency, run by the iconic duo, Mr. Inference and Lady Truth, hence the title of the story. Together, these two unravel all sorts of bizarre, mysterious cases. And just when you think things can't get any more interesting, in walks the paranormal detective, adding a sprinkle of spooky flair to the mix. However, the best part of this series is that the story is served on a silver platter. No need to dig deep through event accessories, skins, or cryptic descriptions. This one's a direct storyline event. Plus, the truth, Inference series doesn't stop there. There are offline packages, and even a novel tied to it, just in case you're hungry for more detective drama. Sure, it's labeled a side story, but in fact, it's so well done it could steal the spotlight. Honestly, I love this series. It's clever, fun, and a great read. The Ivory Tower series might seem like it's just about school-themed character skins at first, like, you know, rocking those cute uniforms. However, it turns out that there's actually more to it. Starting from season 33, the series got its own story centered around Deamery Academy, a fictional school that serves as the main setting. The plot follows the detective club at Deamery Academy, with Murrow, Patricia, Emma, and Norton as the main crew solving mysteries. I skipped this one when it came out. Don't judge me though. There's a lot of Identity V lore to keep up with. But now, I'm kind of curious and thinking about going back to check it out. With so many side stories in the game, it's easy to overlook a few, but this one feels worth a second look. Who knows? Maybe I'll dig into it and share what I find with you later. Identity V has had so many crossovers, it's practically showing off at this point. If you're dying to know the full list, don't worry. I've got you covered in my previous video, where I spill all the crossover tea from 2018 to 2024. And let's be real, some of these events really know how to tempt us with goodies like frames, portraits, stickers, and even free skins. These crossover stories are definitely in the side hustle category. Do I think they connect to the main lore? Probably not. They're usually all about hyping up the featured franchise instead of diving into IDV's own juicy storyline. But hey, I haven't played through most of these stories, so there could be some hidden breadcrumbs linking them to the main lore. Who knows? Stranger things have happened. So, if you've cracked the code on whether these crossovers tie into the main story, slide into my comments and let me know. I'm all ears. Let's not forget the seasonal events and special occasions in Identity V. They're like the unexpected gifts that keep on giving. Events like the Christmas specials, charity events, and more always come with side stories. And here's the kicker. They often sneak in little crumbs of the main lore, which makes them a must-watch, or rather, must-play for all you lore detectives out there. Take the 2020 Christmas Nocturne event, for example. It gave us some heavy insights. Kevin's past relationship with Angelina, and Patricia's heartbreaking struggle with rejection in both her hometown and her childhood environment. Then there are gems like Kurt's Wondrous Journey or Autumn Reverie, which dive deep into the backstories of specific characters, giving us all the feels while connecting the dots to the bigger picture. Basically, these side stories aren't just filler. They're puzzle pieces to the grander mystery of Identity V. If you made it to this point, you'll by now realize that Identity V lore is like a box of puzzles inside another box of puzzles. And just when you think you've got it figured out, another piece drops, and you're back to square one. So, if your first thought is, "This is way too confusing," congratulations, you're just like me when I first dove into this madness. Well, to be honest, I still feel that way every time a storyline is left hanging, which is, like, many times. The main storyline itself, as we know, is still unfinished. The Manor games, aside of the Game 4, Game 8, and Game 9, remain shrouded in mystery. To make matter worse, There are many characters whose backstories are either incomplete, wildly cryptic, or both. So, the question is, how do we even begin to make sense of this chaos? Enter the fandom website, a lifesaver for anyone trying to untangle the lore. Dedicated players from around the world analyze and document the game's storyline, writing up character profiles and event breakdowns to make it easier for the rest of us to keep up. It's like a library of lore, and trust me, it's a lifesaver. Still confused? Don't worry, the IDV community has your back. Across Reddit, Discord, Twitter, and every other platform, there are players who practically breathe this stuff. They're not just fans, they're detectives. Some of them are so deep into the lore that they've become mini celebrities, using their knowledge of history, chemistry, literature, and even mythology to crack open the game's secrets. With a story as complicated and constantly changing as Identity V, it's no surprise that people don't always agree on what's going on. Like I said before, the developers just give us dots, and it's up to each player to connect them in a way that makes sense. Some players turn those dots into a beautiful star, while others end up with something closer to a messy pentagon. And when those different ideas clash, well, things can get a little heated. Still, that's what makes the community alive. Just so you know, IDV's developers love keeping things vague. Most of what we think we know comes from putting tiny hints together, like breadcrumbs. Even part of the Manor games like Game 3A and Game 5, which I've talked about before, are really just educated guesses backed by clues. Figuring out this lore is half fun detective work and half brain-melting frustration. As for me, I've got a serious love-hate relationship with this story. On one hand, I'm obsessed with how it unfolds. On the other, I can't stand the loose ends and unanswered questions. But despite my occasional frustration, I want to present the Manor games and side stories to you in the best way I can. I'll be updating my playlist soon so you can easily dive into the main lore and side stories without losing your mind. Will this journey give me more headaches? Probably, but hey, anything for my fellow IDV fans, right? This is your broadcaster, Silmina, signing off. See you next time.